Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the ENT Youth Services Podcast. ENT Youth Services strives to empower, nurture, and transform opportunity youth to become individuals with essential life skills that are necessary to make a valuable contribution to their communities and the world. Stay connected with ENT via your favorite social media apps and help us get the word out, giving us a 5-star rating on YouTube and also, just sharing our podcast. Now let's start today's episode. And greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the ENT Youth Services Parent Podcast. After a brief hiatus, I am back, your host, Kyler Wiltz, and we're wrapping up our amazing series on fatherhood, the importance of it, and just the ultimate role that it plays within our communities. Um, I'll allow, our brother Archie to introduce himself again, but just he said that we couldn't start without Dr. Perez. So glad that we have everybody on and just blessed and fortunate to continue this dialogue about the importance of having strong male figures within our homes, within our communities, within all spaces, especially for our young people. So without further ado, Brother Archie, would you like to introduce yourself again for our listeners?
Yes, yes. Thank you, brother. Once again, I want to say thank you to all of you for inviting me back again. Yes, I did say without the Minister of Defense, I was not going to start. But I am Marvin Autry. I am the father of two beautiful children. As said before, I am also the Deputy Chief of Police at a major university, and I am ready to go. I look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for joining us. At ENT, we always love to have amazing guests on to kind of further our dialogue. And when I was speaking to Miss Jennifer about, about this episode and what it'll entail, she sent me kind of like the breakdown of the last episode, and I was already kind of in the midst of listening to it myself. um, but it kind of reminded me of a conversation I had this morning at church. Had a guest pastor, and we were just kind of leaving and congregating. And one of the elder members came up to me, and he was like, "Oh, I heard you went to Howard," and he was like, "Yes, sir." So we kind of went into our conversation, told him graduated from the medical school, so on and so forth, and he asked me a question about mentorship. Like how can we get more young black men not only into medicine but kind of on the right track? And in that moment, I was kind of stuck, like through all the work that we do here with ENT, even in our outside individual lives and all the different initiatives, that answer really isn't as clear as we probably would want it to be. But in that moment, I told him that, it's not a answer of one solution, but one concerted collective effort of all of us. And with that, I guess I would like to pitch to you, brother Archery, as to moving forward, right? You've went into great detail and discussed about the importance of fatherhood and about being and providing strong male figures to our young people. But what would be your answer to that question? And I guess in its most rawest form.
Well, last week I spoke about duty. What is our duty to each other and to ourselves, to our children, to our families? I believe one of our duties is to prepare the younger folks, the next generation, for what they're going to face out here. All
Mm,
right. I think we have to start with preparing them. Even in the animal kingdom, the the elders prepare the young. They teach them how to hunt. They teach them how to survive. They teach them who their enemies are. They teach them what to eat. We must do the same thing with our children and with those that are around us. So we have to prepare mind, body, spirit, and economics. If we're
mm,
not teaching the young people what this is going to look like, they will not be ready. I had an uncle who used to say this to me, and he was talking specifically about black men. He used to say, "Man, if you look at a lot of our men, we are stuck in a state of arrested development. He said they reach a certain age physically and they never mature past that age emotionally and spiritually. And part of that is because they were never prepared for what comes next.
Mhm. And that reminds me, funny enough, when I was growing up, one of the earlier books that I read, and it was kind of funny because I think it was like I was 11 or 12 years old when I first read it, but it was a book that my stepdad gave to me, and it was called The Miseducation of the American Negro. And while the subject matter of the book probably isn't a one for one as of what we're talking about, I think the underlying foundational sentiments of it still remains, right? Like the necessity for us to kind of break the constraints of what we've been taught and in the toxic traits that we've ultimately developed. And then to your point, right? I really loved how you broke down the physical, emotional, spiritual, and economics, right? Because the reality is, as when we look at our role in these communities, right? One person doesn't necessarily have to be the end all be all for us to kind of get any and everything that we need, right? My relationship with Dr. Forrester is different than my relationship with Heaven or my relationship with Nick, but we all have specific roles in each other's growth and understanding of not only the topics that we're discussing, but even in our collective community efforts. And one question again is, within your more focused work outside of your father, what are some organizations that you kind of plugged in? I know we kind of briefly spoke about it previously, but as far as pinpointing things of interest that you see in our young people needing to grow, what are some initiatives that you've taken part of, or just some different organizations around that you see that's doing some impactful work?
So I'll be the first to admit, in terms of organizational outreach, I lack in that area. I see an area of need wherever I am. I jump in and I try to help out in that way. I am not a part of any organization in that regard, though. But I help, just like with this. People see me doing something, and they will ask me, "Am I willing to come? As I will, am I willing to help?" And that's what I do.
And I think that, and disclaimer, everyone, this isn't, the question wasn't to kind of label it as, oh, like you need to or you have to be a part of an organization to be impactful. In fact, I would argue that it's quite the opposite. Like we all have a role in making our communities better. Whether it is through a nonprofit organization or a for-profit or just even on an individual basis. I had a mentor when I was having conversations about doing another voter registration drive back in Louisiana, and the point that she made was like, in the civil rights movement, just for lack of a better example in this moment, right? You had the pastors and the preachers who would lead the spiritual side of it. Then you had the orators, the Malcolm X's, the MLKs, the Medgar Evers. Then you had the on the ground organizers, then you had the fundraisers. And the reality is, for us to push forward in a positive direction, not only do we all need to find the things that we are best, equipped to be able to do to push things forward, but also kind of accept those roles, right? When it comes to our ability to be able to navigate and to perpetuate a more positive environment, sometimes it could kind of look like there are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And I think, the beautiful thing with us at ENT is that we first and foremost lead with love, but we also cultivate and create a space for as many people as possible to come within our space and to tell us about their experiences and give them a platform, to talk about these stories. I'm kind of, reverting back. What do you think is the current I guess organization, or not even organization, with the current energy around, fatherhood within the DMV area? I know in my generation there's kind of been like a large push, especially on social media, for just a lot of young men who didn't grow up with dads, who are putting their best foot forward to kind of not again perpetuate that negative cycle. So, within, on your everyday ground to ground, what is your current experience kind of externally? in kind of looking at, Black fatherhood, or just having an increased or even a decreased number of positive male role models?
So I take a look at my son and some of the males and females that are around him. And I look at the difference, and it is noticeable between those who still have the father presence in their lives and those who grew up without it. Um, it makes a tremendous difference. He's also a Sigma, and so I get to see those brothers, the elders amongst the Sigmas, who take the younger ones under their wing and kind of guide them into the steps and what they should be doing next. I really believe the sororities um, and the fraternities amongst our people, they could be tremendous helps to our young people. And not just for those who are in college and are part of their
Hmm.
organizations. If we could get them to come into the high schools, if we could get them to come into the junior high schools and kind of start laying the base, no one man and no one group is going to solve the problem of our folks. It is too deep, and there are too many issues for one group or one person to fix it. We have to find, we got to link with other groups, other individuals, and even some that maybe we disagree on this side, but we can come together on this right here.
Hmm.
That is what it's going to take to turn this thing around for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
I'm so excited about what you had to share because, as you know, I was a Black Panther when I was in high school and then in college. And I thought the Black Greek organizations were counter revolutionary, that we needed to be out there. They needed to be with the Black Panther Party. And fast forward 2 decades, and I'm a Zeta. Why? Because when I went to present, and the women who were coming into my workshop were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I said, "Why are you here? You will die before the virus ever really takes you." And these women were had halfway homes. They were adopting children. They because of the sorority, they were organized, and many hands make for light work. So all I have to say was my heart jumped and leaped when you talked about the sorority and how things have changed. Rites of passage programs in our churches. We need everybody.
Yes, ma'am. I think before, I absolutely agree. I think at one point, if you weren't a Panther, there was an issue with that group. Only way we're gonna make it is if we all become Panthers. If you weren't a part of the NAACP, if you weren't a part of the NAACP, this is the only way we can work this out. We're not gonna get with you. If you weren't part of the Nation of Islam, this is the only way it can work. We're not gonna get with you. I think we have seen that ain't gonna work. We have to take bits and pieces of all the groups, all the individuals to make this work because we weren't enslaved and suppressed by one means. It took a confluence of forces to put us in that hole. And we're going to have to do the same thing to get out.
Hi, my name is Diallo Watts, and I am a part of the ENT Youth Partners. And I just wanted to insert a short interruption to tell you about our sponsor. Today, our sponsor is you, the listener. Thank you so much for donating to ENT Youth Services on our website. Every dollar goes towards plans to continue our impactful workshops, expand our reach on social media, continue our successful podcast, and so much more. If you would like to sponsor ENT, please email us at contact@entyouth.com. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get back to the episode.
I completely agree with what both of you are saying. I actually looked on the chat and realized that we are really, really privileged. Everybody on this chat is amazing and awesome, but I'm really happy that my director of mental health and behavioral services, Dr. Gage, is on tonight. So I would love to hear what you have to say to continue the great thoughts that Captain Autry and Dr. Perez have put forth tonight.
Well, good evening, everybody. It was so nice to join tonight and really appreciate these type of conversations. I think what I always love to bring to the table is obviously just the importance of mental health in men. Um, I can share that I have been privileged to be in a position where I treat men in the area with trauma, mostly Black men, and they are by far my most difficult patients. Um, and when I encounter a patient that is difficult, not in the sense of, combative, aggressive, or anything like that, but there is a push against any sort of mental health treatment because they see that as a weakness. I have heard them say, I cannot be depressed, that's for women, or, I can't be a father or a husband and say that I'm depressed or I have anxiety. I've had men go through every medical workup in the book because they just couldn't believe they had anxiety and panic attacks. Instead, they were ready to go down a hole of it's my heart, going to cardiology and all kinds of workups because they could not accept that they had any sort of mental health disorder. And the biggest part of that for me, I think that resonates is that if you are not willing to take care of your mental health, you cannot be the father, the husband, the son, the uncle, the brother that you have the potential to be, right? People are seeing a shell of you. They are seeing you in a masked version of yourself with this cape on, and that is exhausting. And so my conversations with them, get really raw sometimes. Sometimes it even comes down to like just sexual health. Like you're not functioning because you have depression, and that impacts every part of your body. And that may be one of the biggest challenges for them. But having these conversations about mental health in Black men especially are very sensitive. They require a certain approach that is not going to happen in the typical doctor's office. And I've had men who at a certain point, will accept what's happening because they've seen like nothing else they've tried to figure out is going on is working. Get them to a point of, either therapy or taking medication if it's necessary. And they see the difference, and then they start to realize not only what they came to me for, but they've been dealing with mental health problems maybe since they were even children. Men who have disclosed for the first time that they were sexually abused to me in their 40s, in their 50s. And knowing that this has impacted them as men in relationships, men as fathers. So I think a part of the discussion about our men and how we are able to strengthen them and improve, whether it's fatherhood or relationships, has to start at that mental health piece.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Gage. It's actually crazy. I had this exact same conversation with my dad recently, because we were just talking about growth in general. I'm the oldest, so the conversations that me and my parents will have, tend to be slightly different than my younger siblings, because I mean, as I say often, I have a ton of them. But just even the balance, in the Black community of accepting that, like, while our religion and our spirituality are extremely important to us culturally, traditionally, foundationally, right? I don't think that it should completely supersede the objective importance of our physical mental health, right? Like there are certain, traumas that, while prayer is important, we need to discuss these things with a mental health specialist. And I want to say in our very first episode for this series, we spoke about the kind of machismo that oftentimes our men have, where it's like, even if I'm not okay, I'm supposed to say I am, and just kind of thug it out. and just always kind of be strong because everyone around me is depending on me to be a provider or for me to be a strong one. And I think that that mindset has done a lot of damage, and it's trickled down into like a lot of our young people. One thing that we would oftentimes, encounter, even in PEDS cases with young people, or when I was in medical school on my surgery rotation, or any rotation, when you come across like a lot of our young boys, they just have so much anger in them, and that's kind of like the only way that they can express their emotions. Within that regard, what have you come across, within your work, and how are you helping, like, dads, and even, our young boys, and even, young girls too, like deal with that type of emotional, regulation, recognition, and just kind of, um expressing themselves in a more healthy manner.
So I think it really starts with just education. It starts with education because so many people, when you talk about mental health, whether you say depression, anxiety, bipolar, put a name on it, um, the the automatic thought is someone's crazy. I'm so happy that in this day and age, I believe some of the stigma should drop because there's so much push for mental health. You have all these commercials about therapy, and I'm happy to see they even have black men on the commercials. And then one commercial, guy's like singing in his car, talking to his therapist. And so it is just about not only, men, but women as well, right? The concept of the strong black woman, and you can figure it out, and no matter what, you'll make sure that everything is all right. Like that superwoman cape is also pretty damaging because everybody has a breaking point. And there is a point where, again, this is not about your strength. There's a biochemical aspect of this,
Yeah.
that when your brain has had enough, the chemicals shift and they need help getting back on track. And that doesn't just impact your emotions, that impacts your energy, your appetite, your sleep, all of these things. So I think it starts with education. And I've been really happy though. Again, some of the men I treat, there's a lot of resistance in the beginning, but it just explain to them. Sometimes me just having a conversation about, well, let me guess, have you had this? And they're like, yeah. Kind of like, how do you know that, doc? And I'm like, well, that's what depression is, or that's what anxiety is. And now they see it as part of like this cluster. And I'm like, because other people have gone through that as well. And this is what we've done to help them. So they don't feel so much like this is me and I'm the weak person and, I'm the only one this is happening to. And then as you go back, you have to ask the right questions. When you ask about a family history, sometimes you can't just say, does anyone in your family have depression, or does anyone have anxiety, or does anyone have ADHD? Because more often than not, the answer is going to be nope, not that I know of. You have to
Hmm.
be more specific, right? Have you, had uncles who, isolated and didn't come to family events, or aunts who had what they called nervous breakdowns back in the day, or like you have to kind of know how to ask questions, because just saying depression or anxiety or bipolar may not ring bells for them. But when you start to describe some of the clinical pictures, then you're like, oh yeah, my aunt actually, yeah, she was like that. She used to talk to herself, and we didn't know why she didn't come to the family of, oh, well, maybe she had schizophrenia. So a big part of it is cultural, understanding how to ask questions, how to frame questions so that people can give you the answers you need to help them. But the biggest part is education. Um, Most people don't understand mental health. They don't understand the impact of it. And like you said about just we'll go to church and pray about it. That is typically the response that we get. And my counter to that is, yeah, but do you do that for diabetes or heart disease, or and trying to make mental health disorders the equivalent, which they are, of any other medical issue that they might be dealing with.
And brother Archer, I'd like you to chime into this, from like your own experiences. I mean, again, like you and my dad kind of come from that generation of, it's just kind of like we gotta thug it out. um and it's crazy because I remember like kind of, it was kind of weird because growing up, it was more so like, especially when I played sports or whatever, it was just like stop crying. But then it was like as I've gotten older, and I guess he's also kind of grown, and our conversations have evolved to where it's like it's okay to cry. So what has been your experience, as a black man, and kind of dealing with, those stigmas, and just honestly just kind of growing up in an environment that genuinely didn't kind of embrace that. And I'm saying this also coming from, me, and I'm much younger and still kind of had the remnants of that.
Yes, sir. First, I want to say thank you to Dr. Gage. I appreciate your work and what you do. But I got to say, speaking for black men, in a world where spiritually, emotionally, and every kind of way, we have been castrated. Our manhood has been ripped from us as black men. And so I can't tell you that I hurt. I can't tell you that that don't make me feel good. I can't say to you that's uncomfortable because now it goes back to, well, I'm weak. So a lot of times with the brothers, the only way that they feel that they can show their manhood is through something aggressive. And
Mhm.
oftentimes that aggression comes out in negative behavior. We have special issues and we need to be dealt with and spoken to in a special kind of way. The brother is hurt different than the other males who go through whatever because we got some stuff put on us different than everybody else. We
Mhm.
have been told that we are the boogeyman. We are the cause of all negatives. We are the ones to be on the lookout for. And what does that do after 400 years to us? And unless you can talk to us that way and you can touch us that way, it's going to be hard to deal with us. And that's why you have a lot of the stuff that you have in terms of behaviors from brothers that you see on the street. They hurting. They don't want to be thugs. They don't want to be robbing anybody. They don't want to quit school, but nothing speaks to us. And so
Mhm.
what we do, we turn our backs on everything else. And we get amongst other brothers who hurt too. And then we begin to act out on our hurt. That's
Hurt
what
each other.
that's what you see.
So I want to share something. I'm actually getting a little emotional. 2 weeks ago, I was at a middle school with the ENT team. We were doing our usual teaching kids in middle school, grade 6 and grade 7. And, out of the corner of my eye, I realized that kids were picking on this young kid who he normally, interacts with us and he participates. But, he was crying and, just really not himself. So I didn't want to bring more attention to him. So I slowly went to where he was, looked at him, and gave him a hug. And he was like, "Get off me." And, I have been
Mm-hmm.
doing this for like 20, 25 years. For some reason, I really took it personal. And I know I shouldn't have. And I'm like, this is a kid who is always asking me, like, "Where's my candy, Dr. Forrester? Where's this?" And the way he said it, "Get off from me." So by now, all the boys were looking. Everybody was looking. And I was hurt, but I'm like, Forrester, come on, this is not about you. This is something else going on. So I put on my big girl pants and I stepped back. I said, okay, because I knew if I did anything else, it would escalate. And I took it and I'm like, okay, I'll come find a way. I'll pray about this. I'll talk to the dean of education at that particular school, and I'll come back to it in 2 weeks. So fast forward 2 hours, I'm going to McDonald's. Don't crucify me. Because once every 6 months I get some fries at McDonald's. Okay, don't crucify me. And
We
I'm
all love
in
some good
McDonald's,
McDonald's fries, though.
and I'm, but wait, I'm in McDonald's, and out of the corner of the eye, I see this little boy, and I'm like, by that time I'm like, yeah, let me ignore him. And this little boy comes running to me and jumps in my arms and hugs me, and I look down at him. I wanted to say something, but I looked down at him, and God said, "What happened earlier, man? Why you hugging me, man?" He's like, "Dr. Forrester, please hug me." And I'm squeezing him too, because he's squeezing me. I could barely breathe. And he's like, "Dr. Forrester, don't let go." And I said, "But a little while ago, I was coming over there to give you a hug." He's like, "Yeah, but my boys were there, man. I couldn't hug you there." He's like, "I'm a man. I'm a man." He said, "But don't let go. I need you." He said, "Dr. Forrester, I love you." And I said, "I love you too. I love you too." So I said, why don't you let me get your meal and let's talk? And he said, just don't let go. Don't ever let go.
That's right.
I like I said, I'm in tears right now. And, you know, that just connects with everything you're saying. This is a little kid who was hurting, but he could not in the environment, in the arena
That's right.
that we were in. It's not acceptable
That's
for
right.
a young black man to have emotions.
That's right.
So me hugging him, I messed up. How dare you hug me in front of my boys?
That's right.
Because that's a sign of weakness,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know?
And Doc, as men, it's young. We have large egos, but they are very fragile.
You
We have
know?
we have huge egos, but they are very fragile. And it starts young. And if you all remember in one of our earlier conversations, when you talk about this hug with this brother, if you remember, I said to you all, I was 20 years old before I ever had a male say to me, I love you.
Mm.
I had never heard that before from a male. It only came from the women. What does that do to a person? And how does he respond the first time he hears that from someone?
And it's funny you just said that because by the time he finished eating his fries and I finished eating my fries, he said, Dr. Forrester, the only other person who ever looked me in my eyes and meant it was my grandma, and she died like a month ago. So by that time I was boo-hooing. I had to hold it back. I said, Forrester, you are the professional. What's wrong with you? But I cried. I cried. I held him. I said, well, let me tell you something. From me, grandma, from everybody in your village, I love you, and I ain't gonna stop loving you. And
That's
whatever you need, as long as I have breath, I'm gonna give it to you. And ENT is gonna be here with you. And he said, am I gonna be okay, Dr. Forrest? I said, you better believe it. Because when you cry, I cry. When you walk, I walk. And I am gonna make sure. I said, not just me, the team. Okay. Then he said, Dr. Ford said, don't tell nobody. I can't tell the teachers. I said, okay, hold up. This is where we have to have a conversation because I said, I am not going to be physically able to be there 24/7, but I need to let your teachers know, not that you're crying. He says, okay. He said, because I'm the star on the football team. I said, I understand, sweetheart. I understand. But I said, you hurting. And I said, I have to find somebody to help you. So once I was able to reassure him, I would not expose him to his boys and to the pretty girl that he likes in the class.
right.
Once I was able to read, and I had to, because he looked at me. And this boy, let me tell you, I know he was the quarterback because let me tell you, he squeezed me so tight. I was like, you got to stop squeezing me, okay? Because I'm going to pass out here and we're going to have another problem, okay? But that he wanted to be reassured that I would not expose his fear and
Yes.
his emotions,
Yes.
you know? And he told me, I said, I understand what it is to lose somebody. And I explained to him and I told him how I lost my mom. And I explained to him that it was going to be okay. And he says, okay. And I have been in touch with that young man since that day. So they're out there. Like I said, this is a jock, a guy that everybody in his class looks to. But he was fragile and he didn't know love. And the only person he had in his life that showed him that died a couple weeks ago. So you see where
Mm.
this goes? You see where this goes? You know what I'm saying? You see, but his biggest fear is that he cannot show that sign of weakness. And a hug and love and emotion was that for him.
Well, and he's a young man. What I can say is that that doesn't change, right? The men I treat when I'm able to kind of crack that shell a little bit, the first time they shed a tear, it quickly turns into anger, and they'll say things like what the f are you doing to me, like why are you making me talk about this, or and I'm like, hey, it's okay, like this is your safe space where you can talk about it, but you can tell that they're not used to having to dig into emotions and that discomfort they feel and actually share it with somebody. So I think back to what you said, sir, about just, I always tell them that anger is really just hurt, and the easiest way you know how to express it. Anger is hurt, the easiest way you know how to express it, because with anger, I feel like I have control. I can hit something, I can punch, I can kick, I can yell, and that makes me feel like I have control. Hurt is helpless. I don't know what to do with this feeling. And so this shell starts to develop. And from that shell, you start to feel like, okay, this I can do something about this. And that's where that kind of anger comes from. But I definitely ooh, you made my heart kind of skip a beat with that story. And I see it in grown men, in grown men. And then when they start to reach out, kind of like in between sessions, I'll tell you today, I have a young male. He's in his 30s, in a situation with a young lady. They have two children together. And he really loved this woman. And
Yeah.
he was watching their children one weekend. And when he reached out to her, you know, it was her time to pick them up, she didn't show up. And the kids were with him for days. He didn't know where she was. He happened to get a call that she was in jail. And he found out she was in jail for having a fight with one of her exes. And, you know, he didn't even know how to share this story with me, because there was the embarrassment that he felt about that she was having some relations with her ex, but then also as these children's father, he dealt with a lot of burden, because one is a baby. He was like, I didn't have breast milk, I didn't have anything, and he struggled through that weekend. But he could not share this story in one sitting. It took a couple of tries for me to get the full story from him. But his main focus of her is, I'm a good man. I've been a good man to this woman. I've been a good man to my children. Like, how could she do this to me? And how does she do this to me? And how do I still go on, be this father to my children, but not show this anger that I have for her in front of them? And I was like, my God, like this is so complicated and hard. And all we had to do was process, number one, your children need you right now because their mom is in big trouble. Um, and how do I push aside his own personal feelings about this woman? So these are the sorts of things that, you know, he would not have shared with anyone else. He just sucked it up and had to deal with it on his own. Um, and even today, it's a Sunday, but he reached out to me because they were able to get some sort of custody arrangement after their big blowout. And I was honored that he felt the need to text me and like send me the paperwork so I could see the progress in the situation. Who else was he going to do this with?
Mm, yes, because Doc, oftentimes, oftentimes we as men, when we are in that position as that brother is in, we go to another man who has had similar circumstances, who's
Mm,
now he's upset, he's bitter, and the first thing he says, man, forget her, forget,
mm-hmm.
forget her, man, leave her out there, leave her, man. That's what we do. And so what happens as men when we are hurt, we come out, we meet a sister, and we are interested in her. He got a pretty smile. Yeah, oh yeah, he nice. He thinks she nice. We gonna get together. But she has no clue of what he's carrying. You're dealing with hurt, fractured brothers, and we trying to build a whole relationship.
So I guess my question, because we don't want to end without trying to give a prescription, and I asked this I don't want to direct this directly to only to Dr. Gage. I want to hear her input, but I also want to hear um, Dr. Perez, and I know Miss Edmonds is on also. Before Captain Autry kind of gives his kind of final summary, we need a prescription for these young boys, for that young man. How do we deal it? What do parents do? What's the role of the parents in showing young boys it's okay to care, it's okay to hug, it's okay to love? Where do we even start? Is my question.
I can start, and this is where that conversation about generational trauma comes into play. I can't show you what I don't know myself. Um, so many of our children, as we just shared, have not heard "I love you," have not been hugged. Um, some have been abused, mistreated. And if they weren't, again, just told, like, toughen up, like, you're a man, you don't show emotion, you don't. So, again, education. I mean, you have the opportunity, and again, we want to change the world. Sometimes it just literally has to be one person at a time. Um, and just the conversations. There's a beautiful commercial on TV right now. Um, and it touches me every time I see it. But it's a commercial about mental health in teenagers, and they have a young black male in the commercial with dreads, and he's talking. And I don't know if it's meant to be to his parents or whatever. He's just like, sometimes I don't feel like I'm heard. Like sometimes I just want for you to listen more and try to understand me. And so I just think opening up conversations like that and telling parents it's okay to have conversations like that. And whoever, parent, guardian, and if you are in a position to open up conversations like that, um, most people, when you meet patients, whatever, they'll show you the surface. But most of us have an instinct of when there's something kind of beneath the surface. Sometimes it's okay to push a little bit further. Time doesn't always allow, but when you have the opportunity, again, if we can touch one person, one person at a time, I think it makes a difference. So just being open to conversations that may not be a part of the script that you had for the day. Um, and then also just starting with parents. Like I know you may not have had this from your mother or your father, but it's okay to give it to your children. It's okay to have them open up to you, to talk to you, to show emotion to you. And sometimes the response is not, it's okay, be tough, you got this. Sometimes it's okay to say, I know you're hurting right now, and that's okay. And you'll heal from it. That's a very different message than toughen up and get over it. Those are two very different messages. So, giving that message that it's okay to hurt, to express hurt, and let's figure out how we can go about getting you to heal from whatever's hurting you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, oh no, Dr. Perez, you were gonna go?
No, you go after you.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that, hearing, Dr. Forrester's story and just kind of in general. And I know Brother Autry could attest to this, but a lot of times while we're growing up, we take for granted our upbringings, the things that our parents do, the environments that we're cultivated in. Oftentimes I go back to the story of the first time Dr. Forrester met my parents. And there was a situation going on, and just kind of after meeting my parents, she said that she now understands why I am the way that I am. And for majority of my life, up until that moment, I took that for granted. You know, my mom and dad and my stepmom and stepdad, even till this day, always telling me, I love you. Always, embracing me. Even my dad and stepdad, giving hugs, even when, as a young boy, we like, what you hugging me for? Like, and you see in a lot of these situations that so many people, and especially young people, live lives that are devoid of love, that are devoid of emotional security and embracement. When you hear the example of the young man telling Dr. Forrester, don't let me go. right? Like that means something. And, it hits me really close because, growing up where I come from, I have had a lot of friends like that. And to see it in a sense become even more widespread nowadays in our young people due to a number of different factors, on the one end of it is disheartening, but at the same time, it just shows that things like what we are doing now are becoming ever the more important. Because, beyond the podcast, beyond the youth summits, beyond the community work on the ground, what ENT represents in its truest and rawest form is love. Plain and simple. And it's something that is immeasurable, like the impact that just loving someone and really just bestowing that love into their lives, like what it genuinely does to the outlook that they have of themselves, that they have of the world around them. Dr. Perez, Dr. Perez, you wanted to go?
No, I appreciate all that you said about love and commitment. And I guess the only strategy that came to mind for me is to clean off the dining room table and invite people over.
To that. So with this, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, but with this being our season finale, I want to say we're probably on season 3 or 4 of the ENT Youth Services Parent Podcast. And you know, I'm extremely thankful, not only for my role as a host, but the growth that I've been able to see within myself from engaging in these different conversations and in the meaningful, the quotes, the tidbits, and but more importantly, the personal experiences and the stories that each of you have brought, not only to my life and into my ears, but to those of our listeners. Right. What we've been able to create here is again a space of love, a space of embracement, compassion, spiritual enrichment. I'm extremely thankful for that. Through each and every one of these conversations that we've had, one of the largest overarching ideas that have come from this is the need to tell our young people that they matter. Above all else, no matter what the world may tell you, you matter. We love you. We're here with you in this fight. And together we are going to make the world a better place. We've discussed things from motherhood to fatherhood to mental health within our young people. But the main focus has ultimately always been how do we create a world that our young people can be loved and they could be happy to live in. And with that being said, I want to pass it off to Brother Archery since he's been the focus of the series and his message has resonated tremendously. To close out our season finale episode with some fine words.
So, brother, again, I thank you all for inviting me. And the time always goes by real fast when we do this. But I'll close out by saying this: is those of us who have sight, we are responsible for those who can't see. Um, we have to make Black boys, Black men understand that there is a love that has nothing to do with sex. There is a hug. There is an arm on the shoulder. There's a kiss on the cheek that has nothing to do with sex. It is you are my brother, you are my sister. What I want for myself is what I want for you. That's how I'll close out.
Yes, sir. Amen to that. And so as we close out this episode, just always remember to bring love into someone's life, to be a light in the world, and most importantly, just embrace everyone. We genuinely never know what kind words or what a hug or what an embrace can do to someone in a world that has a lot of calamity and chaos going on in it. And so as we close this episode, we just want to say thank you all for joining in and listening. Thank you to our amazing guests through this season. Happy holidays. Love you all. And see you next time.